welcome from my part as well. My name is Mikaeli Langinvainio. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Inclus. My own background is in risk management since about 20 years. I've been working with the governmental sector on the defense, security, and also peace mediation sector for 10 years with various organizations and governmental agencies. And then the past 10 years more with risk management and business continuity processes with corporations and public organizations alike. I will be shortly stimulating your thinking into the current situation in the world today with outlining top 5 risks in 2022 in my mind to spark our thinking why we are here, why we need to consider risk management perhaps with a different lens today than a month ago or 2 months ago. Then we'll go through the principles of ISO 31000 standard, which is the risk management standard of the ISO organization, and we'll do it collaboratively, inclusively, so that you can actually use Inclus tool to assess the maturity of your organization's maturity on those principles. And at the end, we can have a look on the results and have the general discussions on what is difficult in risk management in your perspective. What is hampering your organization's abilities to incorporate risk management in the leadership, in the daily activities and the operations of your organization. I say it with this assumption that there probably is some challenges as you are here, or you are just interested in to understand the standard better. I open with a couple of words about our company, so you know from where we are coming from and what is our approach to risk management. First on the top risks, and then about our company. So Russia's war with the West that has started approximately 1.5 months ago from the war in Ukraine is not only about the war in Ukraine. And it's definitely about a bigger and more long-lasting clash between Russia and between even the East as a wider bloc, with China and Russia coupling their policies and their economies and their foreign policies together. And of course, a war escalating, spreading could provide many different scenarios into very hairy situations, of course, the worst being a nuclear devastation for the whole world. And everything below that is possible. So the Russia's war is definitely a top strategic risk for us all. And how it will be ending up is a question mark. There will be sure implications to energy prices, availability, global security, and sudden supply chain disruptions in the world. And then China, quite probable trade war with China will ensue depending on their position to the crisis in Ukraine. And of course, the big question is the destiny of Taiwan. Will we have another Ukraine, not in Europe, but in Asia? So that's also a big question. What is also taken is that the cyber warfare is intensifying, and we get more and more attacks, we get more espionage, we get more rogue groups, and the whole scene and the sphere of cyber warfare is intensifying the capabilities. The actors are becoming more and more active, and they are not only targeting critical infrastructure, but also companies more and more. ESG and regulation risks are definitely also in the rise, in sort of a compass with climate risks and sort of energy transition risks. And of course, COVID hasn't gone anywhere either, so we don't have a no-zero COVID possibility, sort of strategy possibility anymore, either in China or nowhere else. So that's definitely still something that we have to keep our eye on. Okay, this was my take on the top strategic risks. You might add maybe in the end of the discussion some of your own thoughts to this or some others. But on Inclus, we are a risk management software provider based in Finland, established in 2016. We are heavily collaborating with Aalto University Systems Analysis Laboratory, which has been quite famous in the world in cross-impact analysis, multi-criteria risk analysis methods and tools. And we have been working with over 100 leading brands, mainly in the Nordics, but of course we are also working with global actors, also currently working with OECD high-level risk forum, for example, and we are quite well, let's say, immersed in global crises, because our background is actually in peace mediation, and we've been working previously before launching Inclus as our core teams and founders were working at CMI Crisis Management Initiative, a NGO founded and then chaired by President Martti Ahtisaari, who's also a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. And we developed basically these tools in the context of peace mediation processes from 2011 onwards. And then we've been just adapting them to different contexts on the corporate world and the public sector more widely. You can use Inclus for risk identification, assessment, risk treatment, analysis, and monitoring, and the whole cycle of the risk management process, which is quite typical and also guided in the ISO 31000 principle and process handbook. We have been applying the tool to many different industries, from construction, manufacturing, energy, mining, chemicals, forestry, logistics. So risk management is pretty similar and standardized across all of the industries. We've been working quite extensively, for example, in construction sector, and you have this sort of emphasis in different sectors. For example, construction sector project always want to do, or often want to do, a cost impact evaluation of the risks, because the projects are getting over their budgets and timetables, and they really need to know how much they will be losing money due to the risk that they have in the project. So that is an example for example, from the construction sector. We have used Inclus, and this is also indicative of the different levels of risk management. We in the strategic level do mission environment analysis. What is the global situation affecting the regional situation, different industries, and then at the end of the day, your own organization. How does the global situation and the different drivers, the scenarios, economy, policy, social issues, environmental, infrastructure, etc. issues are affecting your company's ability to perform and thrive and win in this mission environment that they are. And there we can do scenario assessments, threat and opportunity assessments, and so on. We can do also enterprise risk management, business continuity management, all the way to project risk management with different thematic risk assessments. All right, let's go to the actual content of the workshop. So ISO 31000 principles, frameworks, and processes. So it's first of all important to understand that in order for the risk management to work, you need to have some principles that you want to adhere to. You can just start doing risk management and hope for the best that probably I'm doing it with good principles and guidelines. No, you should sort of be aware of the principles that you should aim for in your risk management in order it to be effective. And ISO 31000 standard is something that is guiding you to be more effective in your risk management. So we have the principles, then we have the frameworks, and then we have the processes. And at the end of the day, we have the tools. And we are now one tool provider, but we need to understand the wider spectrum of the principles, processes, frameworks behind the organization. So risk can be defined as an effect of uncertainty on objectives, basically. So it's the definition of ISO 31000. So quite vague, quite wide definition, but it's good enough. So we always have to have objectives, or we have to have not necessarily objectives, but we might have to have a value that we want to protect. We might want to have a country that we want to protect, an organization's main functions or critical functions, or then we have the strategic objectives and our action that can be hampered through different risks getting to those objectives. And this is a good definition of understanding the different uncertainties getting to your objectives. And then risk management is the process of understanding and controlling these risks. And the activities sort of need to take account of the objectives and values also on the more specific level. While risk management is important, all organizations are subject to a range of internal and external risks. So you always have risks. Whether you understand it or not, you always have risk. So it's better to understand them. That's why it's important, because you might take risks that you are not aware of. You're not conscious of all of the risks that you're actually taking. So why should you take risks that you are not conscious of? Of course, you should be conscious of all of the risks and then select which risks you are willing to take and which you have to mitigate or you have to avoid or you have to ensure something or so. Risk management can be a competitive advantage, because when you do your risk management better than your competitors, you don't lose time, you don't lose money, you don't lose people, you don't get catastrophic loss, and more often we actually find opportunities from risks. And we should also assess the risk and uncertainties through opportunities as well. Typical pitfalls in risk management, according to actually our customers and some research, these are not taken from the ISO 31000 standard, but probably these are quite familiar to the sort of background thinking of that standard as well, is that people think that the risk management is a cumbersome process. There's many steps and it takes time. You have loss of focus and clarity where you should be focusing on. It takes a lot of time. You use a little bit different language in different parts of the organization. There's a lack of common understanding, and the static reporting and sort of generalized risk evaluations are not sort of that engaging or interesting for top management, and maybe not even easy to understand. The low inclusivity and commitment is often then causing uncontrolled risks, or then the risks are not understood that well in the organization, and the commitment to mitigate the risks is low. And then you also get unreliable assessments if you rely on only one or two persons handling the risks of the whole company. Of course, everybody should be engaged in assessing and understanding the risks that are produced by them or affecting them in the organization. Data is often unavailable and structured on risk management. Excel is quite used, and it's a static tool which is not basically designed for risk management and should never be used for risk management, in our opinion, because first of all, it doesn't take into account the whole cycle of risk management all the way to the tasking and controlling the risks with due dates and reminders to due dates, etc. But also the data is lost and it's static, and you can't use the data to understand the progress of the risk, monitoring the risks, and learning from project to project, for example. 3 core elements of the ISO 31000, the principles, and this is something where actually we start already the collaborative and inclusive part of this workshop. So while I'm explaining these principles, we'll ask you to answer a questionnaire if you want. where you would be assessing how well the organization you are working with. And if you're not working with now with an organization, then you can think of the last organization you worked with and think of how well that organization is actually adopting to these principles when I'm explaining them. And there's I will show you the form. So Jesper will send out to your email soon a link where you get into a form which looks like this. So you can select your industry, whether it's chemical industries, commerce, construction, education, health, some other, or transport. You can select your industry from here, and then the country you're from, or from where your office is based. You can also write it down here. And then this is the first question, for example. This is the statement. Our risk management is based on the best available information. And when you do the assessment, you can listen in what I'm talking about this particular point here in the presentation. And then you have two questions. To what extent the statement is true in your organization? And then you can select none, somewhat, quite a bit, anything in between. How do your current tools support the implementation of this principle? So we want to also understand whether you have any tools how to actually, adhere to the principle that we have here. Again, not at all, very little, somewhat, quite a bit, very much. Yeah, so you can do your own assessments in this webinar. So let me continue by going through the actual principles. And let me know, Jesper, when you've sent the invitations.
Yep, they are now sent to everyone.
So an overview of the 8 principles of effective risk management. First of all, you have in the middle, you have the value that you want to create and protect. You might think of the whole company as a whole and the business objectives of the company, or then you might have a project in mind or some thematic area you want to sort of protect. And the 8 principles are best available information. So where do you get the best available information to identify, detect, and assess the risks? Inclusive, where do you get the stakeholders you need in order to commit the right people to analyzing and treating the risks. Then human and cultural factors. You always have a risk management culture in your organization, whether you know it or not. So that's definitely something that you should always keep in mind, that the people are always having an attitude towards risk taking in the organization, whether you like it or not. And there's definitely it's an important discussion to harmonize the understanding of the risks of the company and also the risk appetite of the company, how much we want to take risk and how should we treat the risks and so on. Then we have the integration principle, how well the decision-making, risk management is integrated into decision-making as a whole. So the risk management should be integrated from the strategic decision-making to operational and tactical level, and to all processes basically, dependent of course on the context of your and the scale and industry of your own organization. Then structured and comprehensive, basically meaning that we always need to have some sort of frameworks to analyze the risk. For example, how we assess the risk, what is the impact scale, what is the probability scale how we assess the risk. They should be uniform across the organization so that we can actually compare the data, understand the data. We need to customize it always to the organization's own sort of context, because all organizations are unique, and you shouldn't be trying to put a so robust risk management process to for example, I don't know, creative advertisement office than you have in NASA or in Lockheed Martin or something like that. You know, there's different kind of organizations, and risk management is having a different type of role in different type of organizations. Somewhere the risk management is central for the business. In all businesses, it's important because you have always objectives and values you want to create, but it needs to be customized to the organization, the people's abilities and roles in the organization. It needs to be dynamic, which means that it has to be continuous, or it has to be a process where you actually understand and monitor the risks over time. And then the continuous improvement. Continual improvement often means for the lean people that you sort of you sort of make the processes lean, so that you analyze the processes and you reduce the waste and so on. But in the context of risk management, continual improvement just means that you have to be understanding how well you are how well you are managing the risks. Basically, that's where it boils down to. So now, when you have the forms, you can now think of your own organization and do the assessment anonymously. You will get your own results to yourself, and then we'll get them anonymously to our database, where we can just benchmark them against other organizations. So principle 1, best available information. So of course, risk management should be always serving a decision-making process. And in a good sort of a decision-making process, you should always try to gather the best available information. Often there's no time for that, and people are doing the decisions based on their gut feeling, basically. But the sort of risk management is, and it's often a sort of a mass decision-making process where you identify, for example, 20 risks, and then you try to treat them all. So you have to make many decisions, and it's very hard to get the best available information to analyze and manage all of the risks. But then you should be thinking, what tools, processes, where do I get the right data, where do I get the right expert judgments from different professional backgrounds in the organization, or outsourced or external stakeholders to help to find the best available information. The second is also tied to the first one, so inclusive. How well have you even identified the stakeholders that you have to engage in your risk management processes in the organization? And in the end, of course, all members of the organization are somewhat relevant, but not, of course, for all risk assessment types. So financial risk should be often handled by financial experts and so on. But how well the organization is actually getting the stakeholders involved, and here actually the top management is a really important stakeholder. How do you get the CEO, CFO, all of the CXOs? How do you get the middle management involved? Because often you have either the top management is really engaged, but then the middle management is not really that engaged, or then the middle management is super engaged, and you have a good risk manager, for example, maybe named in the organization, who's excited and really interested in risk management, but then the top management is not really that keen or knowledgeable about risk management. But inclusion doesn't mean only including people from the organization downwards, but also the top management and maybe the board also to manage the risk, because they are at the end of the day accountable of the risk of the company in the big picture. Then we have a principle number 3, human and cultural factors. So what is the culture of actually promoting risk management culture? So what are the what is the level of engagement and understanding of risks in the organization? And more importantly, what is the tone of the organization talking about risks? Is it risk averse that, don't do that, it might go wrong? Or is it like Elon Musk at Tesla, you get fired if you don't take risks? He actually said it, that if people don't innovate and take risks, they get fired from the companies that he are directing. And they have even metrics on understanding how well people are actually coming up with new ideas and testing out things. So of course, if it's a product development heavy organization, then and you have resources for that, that's a different thing. But even if it's a standardized process-oriented organization, there often are issues like safety, efficiency, and sort of supply security, etc., that you have to maintain, and the attitudes towards the risk management is really important. Then integration, principle number 4, how integrated risk management is into the actual decision making of the organization's management system. Is risk management a part of the agendas of the board meetings, of the management executive committees, and project meetings? Is it something that is embedded into the management and decision making of the organization? And managing and anticipating uncertainties on all levels, strategic, operational, program, project levels. What is the sort of integration of risk management to decision making in all of the levels? And how to distribute the risk management responsibilities, or is it centralized to the hands of a few who doesn't actually know to who others they can assign risk management responsibilities? So how well the actual responsibilities of doing the task is divided in the organization. Then principle number 5, structured and comprehensive. So allowing sort of consistent comparable results. So we mean by structured and comprehensive, like I mentioned before, a more technical approach. So how the risk should be defined, how they should be assessed and evaluated, what is the scale that you use for the assessment, and then the planning structure and practicalities of the risk management sort of in advance is sort of essential, that everybody knows what is the process, when we will be starting, for example, a new risk management process, or when they need to sort of report the risks, and how well it's sort of structured in the organization. And then customized, principle number 6, all organizations are unique. So depending on how much there is external risks or internal risks, the risk management process and tools, etc., need to be customized so that it doesn't become too sort of burdensome. First of all, often there is quite a lot of challenges or even pushback to new tools because they are new processes, because they are sort of too burdensome. The people don't understand them. So the whole process should be customized so that the organization can adopt the new processes and operating principles. Then dynamic. Business environments are constantly changing. Like we know now, there's huge shifts in the global and political security and economic field, and we don't exactly know how the business environment will be changing, and therefore to follow it dynamically so that it's not too rigorous, that we don't do necessarily only 4 times a year the enterprise level risk management, but we actually react to the situation proactively, or we are proactive also in scanning the horizon, understanding risks, and trying to be proactive. But at least when shit goes down, you would be having the process already in place, so that you can react, you can manage the risk, you can divide the responsibilities and be dynamic with the processes in the risk management. But it's really important that you have these sort of year clocks, you do this regularly, because then you will have the structure in place to be dynamic when needs be. But if you get a lot of risks, or a lot of risks are realizing in the organization, it's often too late to start putting into the practices and the tools and processes in place. And then you just are firefighting and everybody's running around, rather than you are focused, you know what you're doing. This is a really essential part of sort of change management and skilled leadership to be able to handle crisis situations with basically risk management processes well. And 8 is the continuous improvement, how well the organization is constantly sort of iteratively developing their own processes, tool practices to manage risk. And we never, in the maturity level 5, or very, very few organizations are completely sort of adopted the different, all the different levels, all the different principles of risk management in the organization, so that it's part of the daily life. And even then, you always have to refine your risk management, because you can go always deeper and deeper to doing root cause analysis, systems analysis, business continuity as part of risk management, etc., etc. So it should be continuously improved and developed. And the opportunity analysis, strategy development processes, and so on. So continuous improvement is really important. So I hope that you've been able to sort of assess the organizations you've been working with these 8 principles. And you should get also the results to yourself if I show you. So once you've sent out the answers and you finish, yeah, you can see your current results, and then you see your own results from here. I just answered to one. And how you read the results, I will come back to this in a minute. You have in the x-axis to what extent the statement is true in your organization, and in the y-axis you have your current tools support the implementation of this principle, and then you can consider that factor. Good. Let me just conclude with a couple of other points on the framework and the process, and then we'll look at the results of that assessment and have 50 minutes end of the presentation for just questions and answers and discussion. So there's also sort of a framework for risk management, and the leadership commitment is in the core. So like I said, tone on the top on risks is basically determining the culture on risks, because everybody's following the leaders, or always the people upwards to them in their attitude towards the risks, whether they are sort of risk aware, whether they are willing to take risks, whether they are willing to talk openly about the risks, or, you know, whether they are raising risks in the agendas, and what is the culture in talking about risks. So the leadership and commitment is really important there. And then there should be a continuous risk management process where you have the different phases on understanding the scope and context and criteria of the risk assessment process, which is comprised of 3 phases: risk identification, what are the risks, analyzing, evaluation of those risks, or evaluation and analysis after that, and then risk treatment, how should you be treating them, and then of course recording and reporting. And the communication and consultation, so the engagement of stakeholders, should go throughout this process. Of course, you don't need everybody in determining the context and criteria. You might need them later on in the process, but it's important to consult the stakeholders. And monitoring and reviewing the whole process and the effectiveness of the process is important. And there's also the risk management process step by step, and we'll send out this material to you as well, so you can have a look. Some benefits on the adopting the ISO 31000. It supports the organization to achieve its objectives, better understanding about the positive and negative impacts of the risks, better decision making, more reliable risk management, enables a more systematic, structured risk management process, adapts well to a wide range of organization and operational environment, so basically to any industry. And it's suitable for different use cases within risk management, so whether it's personal security risks or business risks, you can utilize the same methodology. And it's sort of simple and designed for everybody who's involved in risk management. So it's not super complicated. It is somewhat sort of deterring some people in the first glance, but risk management is not really that difficult. It's also efficient and very cost effective. Often the most costly risks can be mitigated with no money involved in the mitigation actions. So the organization should strive always to develop a risk management culture where stakeholders understand the importance of monitoring and managing risk. So the stakeholders, like in the standard, are in the center of this. Humans are producing the risk, and humans should be managing the risks. Now we could have actually a 15-minute talk on the maturity model itself, and then there's also in the material some practical tips that you can look into after the webinar. We'll send out the information to you. But if we look at the results that you sent already to the system, we can see the different. Let me show from here actually. Let me take this actually away from this one. I take my answer away so that it doesn't mix up the data in the visualization. So we can have a look. Okay, there are quite many are in the middle, but we can have a look organization by organization. So these projects are actually now organizations. So we don't know which one of these is yours. You will know yourself where you are situated in this plot. So x-axis, to what extent the statement is true in your organization, and does your current tools support the implementation of this principle. And the first principle is how well our risk management is based on the best available information. And there is 4 organizations who are saying that there's quite well integrated best available information to the risk management, and also the tools are supporting that process. But then there's also a few organizations where that isn't that well adopted in the organization, and it's important to have a discussion and dialogue and lessons learned how these organizations are actually getting the best available information to the risk management so that the other organizations can learn. And we are starting to compile a database on the benchmarking of these principles to also produce a report, hopefully sooner than later, on the realization of these principles in organizations. Then the second principle, how well the risk management includes and draws the knowledge of the stakeholders. Also quite okay, but it's varying on the use of the tools in the organization quite a lot. Our risk management accounts for and considers human cultural factors. A little bit similar view. Risk management is concretely integrated into management and decision-making processes. Structured and comprehensive, a little bit more spread in the 5 organizations done this assessment. And risk management process is customized to the context of the organization and able to dynamically anticipate and respond to the changing situations in a timely manner. Good. And then continuous improvement. So I would like to open the floor for any questions and comments about the whole presentation. And then if you want to share also some results of your own maturity model, for example, what has been the most challenging for your organization in adopting these principles? Does anyone have any comments, questions?
Can I maybe speak a bit from my experience?
Yes.
I'm a freelance consultant, so I was just thinking of an organization that I've been working with. I found it very easy to use, and I found the ability to present up the findings is very useful as a starting point to discussing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it wasn't a real life experience, but a useful one. Over.
All right. Good to hear. Good to hear, Rob. What were, if you're reflecting to the organization you've been previously working with, what has been the principles most difficult to adopt in the risk management?
Right. Okay. I was thinking about it. I think the first is the value of risk assessment itself.
Yeah.
Because of the place that it has had in most of the organizations that I work with, it's been in the funding application as one of the requirements, as a tick box exercise, which most people do and then don't refer to again. So its value and its use is not well established. But I like what you were saying about bringing information forward and using it as a basis for informing ourselves and having discussions about how we mitigate and how we respond and how we bring people together and identify opportunities from using the risk assessment process. I think that needs to be demonstrated a bit clearer in some ways for them to grasp its value.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think the organization of dialogue is very difficult in many of these organizations, even though we would have a lot of meetings. The prospect of strategic planning is done usually every 5 years, and it results in 100-page documents, which staff tend to fear. It's a bit like report writing time. So how do we move outside of that? And the use of this technology, I think, is freeing. It enables people to focus on the data and the analysis, and I think that's very healthy, going beyond just opinions and positions within organizations. So grasping that this is a freeing exercise, I think it has been useful for me to see. The software makes it much easier, much more colorful, and takes off the burden of what is often involved in the planning process. Over.
Yeah, nice takes on the challenges of those organizations you'll be working with, and often the risk management is a sort of a tick in the box type of exercise where they are done for compliance or funding reasons, and then when the risks are really realizing, those organizations haven't sort of even considered that they have done risk management, because it's been just like a tick in the box of the reporter of that funding application, or those risks never have been discussed anywhere. They have been listed into an Excel sheet, and then when the risks are actually realizing, then often the organizations are awakening that, hey, should we or could we have somehow prevented this and this? And often the compliance, corruption, etc., issues on sort of NGOs, etc., on those topics which are then realizing and forcing the organizations to actually start doing the risk management. I captured your points, Rob. Very good points. And if there's no further questions or comments at this hour, we would ask you. We would thank you for participating, and there's in the chat there's a short feedback form that we would like you to answer to, so that we can develop these seminars and webinars more. As we said, this was the first in kind of this webinar series. We will be talking about different themes around risk management. Probably the next one will be about the war in Ukraine and the scenario building around that, and understanding the changes and shifts in the risk management environment in the coming years, and so on. So we'll have different themes, and this was about ISO 31000. So thank you for participating, and if you can answer to the form, which is just quickly asking you a few questions, so it takes no more than 2 minutes to fill in of your time. So I thank from your side, and hopefully see you again.